Welcome everyone. In this video we're going to cover network links, how we can create them, and what are the possible uses for them. Now, network links are one of the most powerful features inside of Google Earth and possibly one of the most unknown and underappreciated. Basically, a network link is a way of bringing data into Google Earth without actually storing that data into the application. What this means is that Google Earth will not use almost any resources to keep that data inside of your list of places. And this will allow you to, for example, create a massive database, potentially of hundreds or thousands of projects, without impacting the performance of Google Earth. Whereas if you store the data in the traditional way, just by creating some drawings inside of Google Earth or importing files from elsewhere, and then just storing them like that under your list of places, you will start noticing how the performance of the application begins to degrade really quickly. Google Earth may take a long time to even boot up, or if you're panning around the viewport or trying to use the drawing tools, everything will become really laggy and choppy. Now, many people, when they start experiencing those issues, will start deleting data from within their list of places in order to free up some resources for Google Earth to be able to work more smoothly. But you don't actually have to do that, and this is where network links come in. Now, if you notice under my work folder, I have some projects already loaded in here, and I have a couple of database folders. Each of those folders contains hundreds of projects, and you can still see that the performance of Google Earth is very smooth. This is because all of these folders are loaded as network links, and at the moment they're not using absolutely any resources from Google Earth, so they are not impacting the performance. In fact, all of the project folders that are contained under these two database folders are all network links. So we have a case of using network links within other network links to further improve performance. We're going to cover how to set this up in just a moment. Now, network links do have some limitations, and we're going to cover those in just a moment and talk about how we can possibly work around them. So how do we go about creating network links? To demonstrate that, I have already loaded a project in here. At the moment, this is just a standard project. It is not a network link. I want to convert it to a network link so that it does not take resources when I store it inside of Google Earth. To do that, we have to, first of all, export this project out as a KMZ or KML file, and then we can bring it back in as a network link. So to export it out, I can just right-click on the main project folder that contains all of these other files in here. And I am going to go under Save Place As. I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and now I can give this a file name and choose the file type. Now, when you're using network links, it is very important that you have some kind of a folder structure and naming convention that are consistent, because a network link is just a link from Google Earth to the file as it is on your hard drive or on the web. And if the location of the file changes, then the link is also going to break. Google Earth is not going to be able to find the location of the file, and therefore it's not going to be able to load it up. Now, for the purposes of this example, I'm going to store this file simply on my desktop, and I don't really care about the naming convention. But if you're going to utilize network links, again, it is very important that you have a certain folder structure and naming conventions, and that you keep your files in the same place, or at least that you don't change the locations very often, because it's going to become difficult to manage your network links. So normally when I'm storing files for the purposes of creating network links from them, I'm going to be very careful where I place them and how they're being named, because I don't want the location and names of those files to constantly change. And if possible, I don't want them to ever change, so that I don't have to do manual management of updating the network links. But again, for the purposes of this example, I'm simply going to store this file on the desktop. And I'll store it as a KMZ, and I'll click on Save. Now that we exported the file out, we no longer need to have this data stored inside of Google Earth, so I can simply right-click on it and delete it. I'll press OK. Now I want to bring it back, but as a network link. And I want to store it under the My Places section because I want to permanently keep it inside of the list of places here. If I store it under temporary places, it's going to be removed if I exit out of the application. So I'm going to right click under My Places, go under Add, and then choose to create a network link. I'm going to give this a name just by calling it Project. And now under the link field is where we tell Google Earth where to look for the file that we want to link. Now this link could be a web link. Now this will be the ideal way to do it, just to link to files that are stored somewhere securely on the web, because there is less danger of files getting lost to hardware corruption, for example. But in my case, I'm using Google Drive to sync my entire hard drive to the cloud. And unfortunately, Google Earth simply cannot read Google Drive folders yet. But if it is able to do that at some point in the future, then this is the way I'm going to do it. I will simply place a direct link to the file as it is on Google Drive and load it in that way as a network link inside of Google Earth Pro. But for the time being, I'll have to load those files from my hard drive. Now my files are still being synced to the cloud. And in fact, my entire hard drive is being synced to Google Drive. I don't store anything locally, again, just for the sake of the security of the data, because there's a lot of valuable client data that I don't want to get wiped out in the case of a hardware corruption. But I still allow the data to sync back to my hard drive so that I can have access to it from my computer for cases like this, where I have to load that data up from the hard drive into an application. So in this case, I'm going to still load the data from my hard drive. But again, if you have the option to link directly to the file on the web, then this would be the ideal way to do it, in my opinion. So to load the file from my hard drive, I'm going to click on the Browse button. And I'm going to select it on my desktop and click on Open. And now I can see that the data was brought back in. So I'm going to press OK. And we can see our project has now been loaded. And the icon of the folder looks differently to a standard folder icon, because this is now a network link. Now, when I expand this network link project folder, we can see that we still have access to all of the data that is contained in it. However, we cannot edit any of this data. We cannot make changes to it. We cannot add more data to this network link, and we cannot delete data from it. If I right click on the entire project folder under this network link and choose to delete it, it's going to prompt me if I want to do that. I'll press OK. And seemingly it is going to delete it and it's going to disappear from the viewport. But as soon as I right click on the network link and refresh the connection, it's going to bring all of that data back in. And if I try to place some new data in this network link folder, it's not going to allow me to do that. For example, if I create a new path here and I try to drag it under the network link folder or any of the folders associated with it, you can see that it's not going to allow me to do that. So this is the major downside of network links, in that you cannot directly edit the data. Now we can still copy data from network links and borrow it, and then we will be able to edit it. For example, I can right click on this entire project folder and choose to copy it. And then I can right click under temporary places and paste it there. Now this data is accessible to us and we can edit it, we can delete it, we can add more data to it, and so on. But the network link itself cannot be edited. There's a way around that, so this is what we're going to take a look at now. Now, there are a couple of ways by which we can do this. One way would be to simply import back the original KMZ file that the network link is currently referencing, do our edits to that file, and then export it out again and overwrite the original file that the network link is linking to. And this is going to update the data under the network link file itself. The other way would be to simply copy all of the data that is under the network link and then paste it, let's say, under the temporary places folder or any other folder, really, it doesn't matter. Then we can do our edits to that data if we need to, or add more data to it, or delete data from it, and then save it out again and override the original KMZ file. So now that I have this project folder copied here, for example, I'm going to create some geometry here, and I'm going to place it under this folder. Now I'm going to save out the entire folder, again by right-clicking on it and going under Save Place As. And I'm going to select the original folder that I saved out as a KMZ, and I'm going to save on top of it and choose to override it. Now I can delete this folder from the temporary places as we no longer need it. And now all I have to do is to refresh the network link connection. So I'm going to right-click on the network link and choose to refresh it. And now any changes that we made to that KMZ file are reflected in the updated network link. I think this is the faster of the two ways by which you can update a network link, because you don't have to bother locating the original file. But if you still want to quickly locate the original file, you can just right-click on the network link itself and go under its properties, and you're going to find the link to that file here under the link field. So you can just copy this link and then go under any folder and paste the link in the link field. And when you press enter, Google Earth is going to load that KMZ file. But again, I prefer to simply copy the entire data from under a network link, paste it under temporary places, do my edits to it, and then export it back and override the original KMZ. This way I don't have to look for that original file. Now that we have this data stored in Google Earth as a network link, Google Earth is not going to use resources to read it every time it loads up. So your performance is not going to be impacted by having the data stored like this. It's only going to be displayed on demand when you need it to. For example, you can see that many of the folders that I have stored here as network links have not been loaded up. And we can see that they're not loaded up because they don't have the arrow to the left of the folder. This arrow indicates that the folder can be expanded because the data under it has been loaded up. If you want to load up the data of any network link that you have stored in Google Earth, all you have to do is to just click on the checkbox next to the folder, and this is going to load up that data. Google Earth is going to look for the location of the original KMZ file that is linking to, and it's going to bring that data in. And now finally, I wanted to quickly cover how we can create network links within other network links in order to further optimize performance. Let's say that I want to create a database that contains many projects. In fact, I'm going to create another copy of this project under temporary places, and I'm going to rename this to Project A, and this will be Project B. And now I want to create a brand new folder that is going to be the main folder that will serve as a database. So I'm going to right-click on temporary places and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this database. And now I want to export out each of my projects as a KMZ. So I'm going to right-click on Project A first and go under Save Place As, navigate to my desktop and save it out there, and repeat the exact same step for Project B. And now I can delete both of these projects because I no longer need them. So I'm going to select everything, right-click and choose Delete. And now I want to bring those projects back inside of Google Earth as network links. And I want to place them under this database folder. So I can just right-click on the database folder itself, go under Add and choose Network Link. I'm going to call the first one Project A, and I'm going to click on Browse, and I'll select the Project A KMZ and click on Open and press OK. Now I want to bring in Project B, so I'm going to right-click on the database folder, go under Network Link, call this Project B, and browse to the KMZ file, and then open it up and press OK. Now all we have to do is to export out the database folder as a KMZ. So I'm going to right-click on it, go under Save Place As, and export it out as database.kmz. And now I can delete it just by right-clicking on it and going under Delete. And now the last thing to do is to import the database KMZ as a network link. So I'm going to right-click on temporary places, go under Add, choose Network Link, and call this database. And go under Browse and choose the database KMZ and click on Open and OK. Now if I expand this database, we can see that it is a network link and it contains a couple of network links to each of the projects that we exported out previously. Now creating network links within other network links is something that you could try if you are using Google Earth as a database where you're storing hundreds of projects. It's not something that I found to be necessary. Even if I have many dozens of projects, I can still use just single network links, and I find that the performance of Google Earth is very good even then. In any case, it is an interesting concept, so I wanted to cover it in case somebody wants to experiment with it. And with that said, thank you for watching and see you in the next sessions.